Well, so all right, so give me. I'm curious, like in the context of one of the messages that you have is that obviously to reach out to these individuals that there's a chance that all of them, if not some of them, are redeemable and whatnot. I mean, what about like the leaders and who they are, and and the thought leaders, because on this program, right? Like I will call out members of the alt-right and we'll replay videos that we've seen of them, whether it's Richard Spencer or and I don't know if he's alt-right. I mean, he seems full on white supremacist Nazi, but maybe even my saying full on is not appropriate in this context. But guys like Gavin McInnes and the guys who wear the Perry tennis shirts, so they can or even, when you have sort of a more of an intellectual veneer where you're talking about mainstreaming a perspective on Islam that it is, let's say, the motherlode of bad ideas, that type of thing. What should we be doing generally, and what should someone like me, who has a not a huge platform but a platform, and is it should I be exposing these people, or am I driving them into a corner in some way? What is it? What do you think? Because you've obviously been working for at least a decade now on getting people out of these movements. What's the best thing for all of us to be doing?
Well, I can tell you that there are two things that neo-Nazis or white supremacists love, and that's silence and violence. If we're silent, if we refuse to acknowledge that they exist, if we sweep them under the rug and continue to think that we're living in a post-racial society and we're surprised when we hear about, a rally, they grow because, they are able to now focus on the grievances of people and tailor their approach. If we are violent towards them, they grow because they then use that as the victim narrative, the same way that they do the white male narrative. They are now the ones being attacked. They're the ones who are being hated by the haters. They're the ones whose freedom of speech and rights are being, taken away or oppressed. And they're very good at spinning information. They're very good then at discrediting the other side and calling them terrorists. And that's why we're hearing, such bad things about Antifa. And the reality is Antifa are not terrorists, and they're not violent. While there may be some people in those groups that are violent, there are always, extremes in every organization. So the best example of what I saw was actually just a few weeks after the Charlottesville rally in Boston, when you had a couple of dozen white supremacists rally, and around 20,000 people from Boston surrounded them as a counter-protest. And they said, we see you, we hold you accountable, we want you to know that we're here, against your message. But we're not going to adopt the same tactics that you do. We're not going to be violent or punch you in the face. We're not going to throw things at you. And if you want a way out, here's a pathway. We'll take you. Because we have to understand that these people joined these movements because they felt marginalized. Things in their life were not going well, and for some reason they thought that adopting a violent, hateful ideology would make them feel better about themselves. Because if we make people feel worse than we feel, then we feel better. So I think pushing them away is not the right tactic. I believe in bringing them in closer. I've had conversations with Richard Spencer. I sat with him for 2 hours in Whitefish, Montana. I was there speaking after the terrible troll storm and attacks that they received at the hands of the Daily Stormer and even Richard Spencer. The Jewish community there was attacked online. They were threatened. Their addresses and photos and phone numbers were published. Their pictures were photoshopped, at the gates of Auschwitz. Young people, kids of, Jewish families and children of the rabbi were threatened, and the town was terrified. And Richard Spencer lives in Whitefish, Montana with his mother and his daughter about 50% of the time, and the other 50% he lives in Virginia. And I was there. The community invited me to speak, and I spoke there. And knowing it was a place where he lived, I sent him a Twitter message saying, "Hey, I dare you to come to my talk tonight. I'm speaking in your town, and I'm speaking about you." And he replied back saying he would come. And he did come, and nobody saw him walk in to the auditorium because he went up to the balcony and it was dark. And at the end of my talk, somebody had asked in the audience as the last question, obviously our town is known for Richard Spencer. What would you say to him if he were here? And I turned and I took the microphone. I looked up to the balcony and I said, "Richard, would you like to go out for a cup of coffee?" Because I wanted to listen. I wanted to hear why he went down that path. I'm not interested in hearing his ideology or his beliefs or debating with him, even though he tried. I would always divert by asking him a question, a personal question. What his relationship was like with his father, who also spends 50% of his time away from his family living in Dallas. I asked him, how hard it was to be a father to his daughter, being gone. And those questions caught him off guard. And he gave me what I thought were pretty honest answers that seemed vulnerable. And he admitted that he had, a tough relationship with his father and had a hard time living up to his expectations. He said it was hard to be away from his daughter and not be there for her. So I heard all these potholes that I talked about. And while, I still think that Richard Spencer is, a pompous, self-serving racist, I also know that at some point he was not a monster. At some point he was a quote-unquote normal person who couldn't deal with something in his life that he chose to go down that dark path to fulfill that need, which is why I believe that everybody can be redeemed. And I approach everybody the same way that I would have liked to have been approached as a teenager. At 18, if somebody would have thrown a bottle at my head, I probably would have punched him back. And it would have made me even angrier. But I approach with compassion, and I listen, and I look for the things that I can help with and build resilience with. Because once a person feels better about themselves, they often don't need to blame the other for what's wrong in their life. They're now accountable.